So today I wanted to share a personal story of mine about a time at the end of 2017 when I put my entire life savings into Bitcoin and turned $42,000 into over $100,000 and then lost all of those profits. It's a story that one of the major UK newspapers actually covered called The Telegraph, and cryptocurrency was a lot newer back then. The main ones were Bitcoin, Ethereum. In this video, I want to explain what happened, what I did, and what I learned from it so that you can take a lesson or two from it as well if you're investing in the crypto space. I essentially did what you're not supposed to do, to not put all of your eggs into one basket and to not tie all of your dogs to one leash, and to especially smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, as it massively helps out a small channel like mine to be seen by more great people like you who enjoy these videos and stick around for the community. So when I was younger, probably starting from college and then going through university, I was always pretty good with money and managed to save a lot. And as I became older and went through university, I was also very entrepreneurial and hardworking. Over time, I had managed to save around £30,000 or $42,000 from freelancing and my design gigs, working in multiple jobs, and just generally enjoying being busy and making money while studying for my degree. Almost all of the money stashed away was in a stocks and shares ISA, which in the US is also known as a Roth IRA. And to be fair, it was comfortably gaining about 7% a year and ticking along quite nicely, bearing in mind that all of this was also tax-free. After graduating, I began renting in London for my new graduate job. I was fresh-faced and earning a decent salary after graduating, which had helped with the saving, even in London with its extortionate rental prices. And so far, I had been pretty sensible with money. I was learning how to make this stuff, but also invest it wisely into a managed fund or portfolio, which is spread across hundreds of different companies to minimize risk and balance out any of those losses, and all of those gains to hopefully get something above 0%, as savings accounts were pretty much offering that and still are today. To describe that position, I was definitely comfortable. I had $40,000 stashed away in the stock market, had a great job earning great money with room to move up the ladder, and didn't intend to buy a property or anything major for at least a few years. So it felt like the money would work hard for a few years, and then when I'm ready, I would take it out and then buy a property with it. But this is where I wanted something more. I wanted to see whether I could push the money further and put it into something more riskier in the hope of greater returns. On Fidelity, where I was investing all of my money at the time, I had some more riskier funds, and mine was sat kind of in the middle. So it wasn't the lowest risk, but also not the highest risk either. And then at the same time, Bitcoin was just starting to become very popular, and the media were talking about it because it had shot from a few $100s into a few thousand all of a sudden. And when something increases that fast, everybody wants in. It creates loads of media attention, which means more people buy in, and then it increases the price even further. So I became more and more interested and probably started thinking about putting money into Bitcoin when it was about $4,000 at the time, just for one Bitcoin. I probably put a few thousand in it to play around and started to see what was happening. I was getting 10% returns, 20% returns, 30% returns, and it just kept going up and up and up. So out of greed, I decided to jump all in and withdraw my life savings out of my tax-free ISA and put all of that into Bitcoin. And then by the time I had all of the cash out of the ISA and ready to reinvest, Bitcoin had already gone up to about $6,000. So for $42,000, I owned about 6 Bitcoins averaged out. And the platform which I invested in at the time, which was eToro, even promoted me to a diamond member, which was basically because I had so much money invested with them, they kind of bumped me up, and it was some kind of privilege that you get with that particular level, like extra support, etc. But it was unfortunate that all of this also wasn't in an ISA, so after putting $42,000 in, whatever I made back wouldn't have been tax-free. But to be fair, the younger me wasn't even really thinking too much about capital gains tax. I just wanted to see massive returns that you can get in crypto. So here I am with $42,000 and my entire life savings invested into this one thing. I was looking at the Bitcoin charts all day. I used to open up my iPad, turn off the auto lock, and just leave it on my desk watching the candlestick charts go up and down every single day. And I remember waking up in the morning and then seeing Bitcoin had risen massively again and again by another few $100s. $6,000 became $7,000, $7,000 became $10,000, and I could see my life savings just increasing literally on a daily basis, which was an amazing feeling. I felt like I had literally just cracked life and unlocked the top level, which is almost like a money printing machine. From having this stocks and shares ISA and gaining about 7% a year, I then had this crazy eToro account which was gaining about 7% every single day. I just couldn't get my head around it, and I'd never really seen anything like it. But I did wonder about selling some of that off, but I decided to keep all of the cash in and just to keep seeing where it could go. Lo and behold, it just kept climbing. It was just absolutely mind-blowing seeing this decent sized pot of money grow into a very, very large sum. $42,000 turned into over $70,000, and it kept on going. I was already starting to think about what size house I'd be able to afford with the new bigger deposit in London, and checking out different for sale prices around where I lived to see how much of a mortgage I'd need with the new large chunk of cash that I'd made through Bitcoin. Strangely, I became somewhat used to it. I thought that Bitcoin would just keep on surging and surging in this snowball effect of more people buying, more media attention, which then causes more people to buy, and watching the graphs go up and up every single day. It kind of changed from euphoria just to kind of normal. It felt great knowing that I had grown my cash into a decent pot of money to use. And the plan was to keep on holding for a long time and see how far it really could grow. I even actually wondered at one point whether I would become a millionaire off of it. And more time went on, and I'd get into the cycle of wake up, view the gains, carry on with daily life while still checking out the iPad to my side like every hour on the hour. And to be fair, it was about at this point I was researching tax on crypto and capital gains tax and how it all works, as I was none the wiser about all of that kind of stuff at the time. But I was realizing that whatever I made on the Bitcoin, I would be paying somewhere between 20 to 40% tax, depending on all of the total earnings if I had sold it all. And all of this also happened over the Christmas period in 2017, so it was also a great end to the year, celebrating with family and watching all of these gains. But then came a really strange moment. I remember the day it hit six figures. To see over $100,000 sat there in my eToro account, it was like a figure I'd only ever dreamed of seeing in a bank account or an investment account. But I also was about 22 years old, so still quite young to the whole investing thing. From working incredibly hard over the years and storing away as much money as possible, I'd essentially almost tripled the money and had six figures sat there. I just couldn't get my head around it. And there's always a saying to not get too greedy in stock shares and markets, because you never really know what could happen after a large surge in a company, and nobody knows where the peak is. All you can really do is look back in hindsight and look at where you bought and then where you sold. But part of me really wishes that I would have just seen those six figures and just sold at that point, and then enjoyed turning $40,000 into $110,000 just as it was hitting all of the crazy highs. And I think Bitcoin was around $20,000 at that point. But then with any almighty crash in any stock or crypto, what goes up must come down. And this is where I started to learn the hard way. Now, my big caveat here is that yes, in 2021, we know that the coin is $60,000. But back in 2017, when it surged to $20,000, nobody knew that, and no one knew what was going to happen this year. The price started going down, my six figures turned back into five figures, and it kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And this is where I learned my major lesson: not to put all of your eggs into one basket and invest your entire life savings into one thing that is really hyped up. As quickly as I'd gained all of this equity in the Bitcoin investment, it was tanking down and actually went as low as $3,400, which would have halved my investment and lost most of my life savings. Thankfully, I made a decision that even to this day, I still don't regret. I took the money out pretty much at the point that I put it in at. I might have lost about $1,000 or so after converting it back to pounds, but just that feeling of wishing I would have sold at 100k instead. I was just left back with the original $42,000 and then put it back into normal index funds again. I definitely got my fingers burnt and learned a lesson from that. But with that being said, and many years later, obviously Bitcoin is now worth about $50,000. So those 6 or 7 Bitcoin that I owned back then would now be worth nothing short of $300,000, which would have been an incredible investment, and it would have been amazing to have $250,000 pounds and dollars worth of Bitcoin. So yes, in hindsight, maybe I should have just held on and seen the price shoot up from 42k to about 300, but to be fair, I still have no regrets. With that cash, I replenished it, but with more savings, and ended up buying a 2-bed flat in London with that cash, which I would never have been able to do if I held on to Bitcoin, because it only really truly went up this year, up to all the brand new highs. And if I wouldn't have been able to take that money out and use it on a property, I still probably would have been renting today, and I wouldn't have lodgers, and ultimately without the flat, it wouldn't have really fired my passion to get into property investing in the UK. So there's always a silver lining. It could have been way worse at the same time. Some people invest a lot of money into crypto and end up losing all of it on one particular coin. or I could have held on longer and sold at the even lower point and had a loss on my money, which would have been a little bit more bitter, kind of seeing it now at $50,000. Of course, hindsight is always a great thing, and on one hand, I wish that I would have left it in, and now I'd be sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars, but on the other hand, we never knew that Elon Musk would start supporting it or pump the coin, or really where it would go. So time has only matured the Bitcoin and crypto market more, which we didn't really have back in 2017. So it's easy to look back now on it and say, yep, you definitely should have held. But either way, I used that cash to buy a flat in London. I didn't lose out. So either way, it was a bit of a win-win by changing a silly decision into just about saving it. But one major lesson that will definitely stick with me for the rest of my life is to diversify all my investments and think about the risk and exposure more and not being too exposed to one particular asset. So as I go through life, if one market tumbles, another might surge, and ultimately the wealth that creates continues to increase, hopefully. So I hope you found that interesting, maybe given you some food for thought on your own investments. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out the others like this one on the top here, which is my day in the life of a property investor. Or you can check out the one on the bottom, which is my analysis into whether Bitcoin could reach 100k or not. So feel free to choose one of these. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video.